Welcome back, friends. Let's continue discussion on Louis Braille and his life and his achievements. Along with studies, Louis Braille was also interested in music. He was very good at the cello and the organ. So he worked as an organist in Paris and at the Church of Saint Nicolas de Champs from 1834 to 1839. And later he also worked as the organist in the Church of Saint Vincent de Paul. After his education at Royal Institute for Blind Youth, he initially worked as a teacher aide, a helper for the teacher. And by 1833 he became a professor in the same school where he had studied, that is Royal Institute for the Blind Youth. And he had a dream, remember, that is to create a system of reading and writing for the blind people. Therefore, he had started working on that system since 1821 from the age of 12. He was 12. And by 1829 he published his system, but later it underwent some revisions and finally it was published later on. But for his system, he had one particular inspiration. Remember, Louis Braille was not happy with the Valentin's system of reading for the blind because it would allow one to only read. One could not write with that system. And now he came across one system of code or language that was developed by Charles Barbier, who worked in French army, and his system was called night writing. So this night writing was prevalent in the battlefield for the soldiers to pass on some secret messages even without the need of any light. Even in darkness they could read it. So it was developed in such a way that they could read it even in darkness by way of touch. So this night writing involved codes of dots and dashes impressed into thick papers. Valentin also used very thick papers, but here probably they used lesser thick papers on which some dots and codes and dashes were impressed, stuck onto that thick paper, so that by moving the finger over those dashes and codes and dots, one could understand what is the message. So this inspired Braille a lot. So inspired by this night writing, Braille wanted to develop his own system of reading and writing for the blind people by simplifying this code and dots and dashes system. So by 1824 he came up with the first version, and after several revisions he published the final version in 1837. So his system was developed in such a way that by a single touch of a finger one could read. No dashes, no dots. It did not involve so many complications. He simplified it and used only dot system. As I have shown you the Braille system in the first class, that is session number 10. Now there are two columns and three rows involving dot system. And for developing such a great system, Now he used the awl, AWL, awl. Remember, that is the same tool that pricked his eye and made him blind. And now he used the same pointed tool to develop his own raised dot system. So this is the irony of that tool. That is, the tool that blinded him was the tool that allowed the blind to read and write. So this is how Louis Braille turned his adversity into diversity. The same pointed tool that blinded him allowed him to develop a system of reading and writing for the blind people, which is used even today, named after Louis Braille. And he tries to introduce that system in the school, Royal Institute for the Blind Youth, but many people believed in Valentine High's system, whereas Louis Braille's students were interested in Braille system. So in the meanwhile, Braille falls ill uh, and he moves to his countryside, that is Copre, his village. He moved to Copre and stayed there till his death in 1852 at the age of 43. And after 2 years from then, the school board introduced Braille system. Now sadly, when he was alive, he couldn't see his system being used in the school. It was introduced later, after 2 years of his death. It was introduced in the institution, Royal Institute for the Blind Youth. And a little later, the founder of Royal Institute for the Blind Youth, Dr. Thomas Rhodes Armitage, he praised the Braille system in the first conference for teachers of the blind youth. First conference for teachers of the blind in Europe, which was held in 1873. So in that first conference of the blind people, teachers of the blind, he praised Louis Braille system, saying it is simple and convenient to be used by the blind people. So this message, his words carried and passed on. The message spread across the globe, and a universal Braille code for English was formalized in 1932. This is how Louis Braille has become a name now. Though he was blind, though he was in darkness, he showed light to innumerable blind people in the world. So along with studies, this is what we have discussed in today's class. Along with studies, he was good at even music, at cello and the organ. He also worked as an organist in churches. After graduation, he worked as a teacher aide and became a professor. Charles Barbier's night writing inspired him to create his own system. He simplifies that night writing and creates his own system of reading and writing for the blind that involved raised dot system. After several revisions, he published his system. It involved raised dot system, which could be read by the single touch of a finger. The system became popular after his death and was introduced in the school where he studied and taught, and even today this system is used worldwide for the blind people to educate as well as to make them read and learn. That's all about Louis Braille. Let's meet in next class. Thank you.